Today I'll be reading Chapter 8 of Only Fools Rush In. A College AU by Vindicated Virgil on Tumblr, Bookish Panda on AO3. Trigger warnings apply to this chapter, including sexual innuendos, thank you Remus, mentions of hospital visit, mentions of cancer, chronic illness, very vague mentions of domestic abuse, and vague mentions of sex. Please take caution while reading and/or listening. Chapter 8 of Flowers and Freeing Words. Like a river flows surely to the sea, darling, so it goes. Some things are meant to be. Patton wasn't sure if he believed in fate. Sure, his mom would read him fairy tales as a kid, and he hoped that someday he would find where he was meant to be. But he had worked hard to get where he was, taking care of his mom when she got sick, helping run the flower shop all throughout high school, and helping when he could now that he was in college. Everyone he had dated in the past always felt like a background character, or one of those characters in video games that you only really deal with for one quest, and then you don't see them ever again. A part of his journey, yes, but not someone to join him on the rest of his journey. And then he met Remus. Remus, who was so unlike anyone he had ever dated, who looked at Patton like he held all of the stars in his hands, who held him so gently after their moments of intimacy that Patton almost felt like a porcelain doll, so fragile, so ready to break in the hands of the person who he loved so dearly, as long as Remus was happy. It had all happened so quickly. From the moment they met, Patton was in it. Their first date was unlike any other he had ever had, because they both broke down their walls. And as they grew to know each other more, as they progressed physically and emotionally, Patton wanted more and more to believe that Remus was the one he was made for, that perhaps Patton Hart, in his mother's womb all those years ago, was being crafted just so that he could be held tenderly by Remus Creative. He didn't want to lose that. He couldn't bear the thought of it falling apart. Perhaps that was why he reacted so negatively to what Roman did during the power outage. For the first time in his life, Patton had something that he was terrified to lose other than his mother, Logan, and the flower shop. And even though Roman was one of his best friends, maybe especially so, he couldn't bear the idea that the theater major would get in the way of what was, in Patton's mind, meant to be. It haunted his every thought, though. When he curled in Remus's arms, the fresh afterglow settling above both of them. When he sat in his child development classes. When he got the stems off of flowers in the shop. It was all he could think of. Roman's letter. And now he felt guilty for holding this grudge over him, but he didn't know how to resolve things. Until he realized that the opening night of the musical was coming up. "Hi, Mama," Patton said, stepping into the flower shop, Remus in tow. "How are you today?" She swept him up in his arms, pressing kisses into his hair and on his cheeks. "Much better now that you're here, darling." Her eyes fluttered over to Remus, who smiled, holding his hand out, but she pushed it aside and brought him into a hug as well. "Remus, you look very nice." Remus glanced down at his outfit. He was wearing his dark green suit and had his hair brought back into a bun. It was the opening night of the play, and they were making a quick stop before going to see it. "Thank you, Miss Hart." He pressed a kiss to her cheek before stepping away to look at some roses, allowing time for Patton to explain what he needed. "Yellow roses, Mama, for friendship," he said thoughtfully, glancing at the vase he had dropped off with her the other day. The usual fillers are good." He fidgeted with the ends of his pink skirt a little bit. He had also dressed nicely. It was almost like he and Remus had decided to cosplay as Elphaba and Glinda. Patton wore white pumps. A white shirt with a sparkly bow tie was tucked into the skirt, and some sparkly tights. Remus had nearly dragged him into the bedroom when they met up at the apartment earlier. That would have to wait until later, though, because Patton didn't want to miss a single moment of the musical. Patton cheered louder than anyone for Roman, even louder than Remus, which seemed impossible, but he managed to do it. The only person who rivaled his deafening cries was Janice, who beamed with joy and proudness whenever Virgil was on stage. And even Logan had to brush a few tears from his eyes at the end of the musical, when the entire audience stood and cheered as Roman stepped out into the curtain call. After the curtain call ended, Janice, Logan, Remus, and Patton stood expectantly where they knew Virgil and Roman would be coming out. Janice held the bouquet for Virgil, and Patton had the one for Roman. They stood there for a while, watching as families and friends greeted the actors and then left, and soon it was quiet. "Where are they?" Patton asked hesitantly, as she shared a worried look with Janice. "Do you think Virgil had another anxiety attack?" "They're probably just fucking," Remus muttered, his hand snaking around Patton's waist, leaning down to press his lips to his earlobe. "Exactly what I'll be doing to you later tonight, little flower." "Ree!" Patton flushed hard, batting away Remus with his free hand. Janice smirked, a low chuckle escaping as he watched the encounter with the two. "You keep making moves like that and you'll get nothing but a door in your face tonight." Patton was teasing, of course, but Remus stepped back, a hand clapping on Logan's shoulder as the two discussed a project they had in a mutual class. Finally, Roman and Virgil stepped out of the green room, their hands intertwined. They were both cleaned of their makeup and costumes, and it occurred to them all that since the two were dressed in intricate costumes and makeup for the Tin Man and the Scarecrow, that it would take them a bit longer to finish cleaning up. Janice moved first, scooping Virgil into a big hug, murmuring how proud he was and complimenting his work. Patton stepped up to Roman hesitantly, holding out the bouquet of flowers. "You did amazing, Ro," he said quietly, smiling up at his friend, whose eyes brimmed with tears. Roman took the vase with the flowers, then set them on an empty table before hugging Patton tightly, sobbing into the smaller man's shoulder. "Hey, shh, it's all right. We're okay, Ro." As the two hugged tightly, he felt a pat on his shoulder and glanced to see Logan, smiling brightly but shaking his head, as if to say, "You idiots, I love you." "Get in here, nerd," Roman muttered before pulling the smartest of the three into their hug. Patton didn't know how long the three stood there for, but when they pulled away, Janice was still hugging Virgil tight. Remus gave Roman a brief hug. "Proud of you, bro, though I still say the medieval play in high school was your best," the mustached twin said, and a look of realization crossed Roman's features. "You saw that play?" he asked, and Remus nodded, confused. "Mom and Dad said you didn't want to go." "I sat in the back corner, but I was so proud of you, bro, man." Remus smirked at the nickname he had used in the past for his brother, and Roman laughed, pulling his twin in for another hug. "You did awesome tonight." Patton apparently had snapped a photo of the pair hugging with his Polaroid camera, and thus entered the struggle over who would get to put it on the fridge. Janice won that fight. Patton sat alone at one of the tables in the schoolyard, his brown paper bag full of goodies that his mom made sure to include. It was scary, starting in a new school halfway through the year, and all of the other kids made fun of the flowers he brought in for his new teacher. Then they made fun of him for wearing a pink sweater, for his big round glasses, and for having long hair that his mom had put into a bun for him that morning before he got on the bus. So, there he was, 2nd grade, sitting all alone. He didn't mind, because he knew that when he got home, he'd see his mom, and they'd be safe. "What are you doing?" a voice said from beside him. He looked up to see a boy with square glasses, neatly combed hair, a polo shirt, and a tie. Patton remembered him as the boy who answered all of the questions during the science part of their class. "This is my table." Oh, I'm sorry. I just didn't have anywhere else to sit." Patton looked down, trying to hold in his tears. He didn't want to be known as the kid who cried on his first day at the school, and his mom always knew when he'd been crying. "I'm so sorry." The other boy sighed, sliding into the seat across from him and setting a book down. "It's fine, just stay quiet so I can read. Okay, Patton Hart?" he asked, and Patton looked up at him through teary eyes. You know my name?" His voice was shaky, and he slid his glasses up to sit in his hair so he could wipe his tears with the sleeve of his sweater. The other boy nodded. "You are the new kid. You have a frog backpack and a notebook with a kitten on it," the boy said matter-of-factly. "A little bit frivolous, but if it's what you enjoy, then there is no harm there." "Frivolous?" Patton asked, giggling. "You use a lot of big words." The other boy sighed again, adjusting his glasses. "Yes, frivolous. Frivolous. It's something that does not have any serious purpose or value," he explained, and Patton nodded, face deep in thought. "You know that underwater sea animal, porpoise?" "I am aware of them, yes. Why do you ask?" he asked, and Patton giggled, having thought of the perfect pun. "So, if I put a porpoise with serious guy glasses and a tie on my notebook, would it stop being frivolous?" He giggled all the way through his joke, and the other boy groaned. "That was awful. Why did you do that?" "I thought it would be funny," Patton said, sinking down a little. Do you not like jokes?" He thought about his father, who never made any jokes around him, who glared at Patton whenever the jokes came out of the small boy. "I do not think that they lead to important discussions, is all," he explained, and Patton nodded, taking a bite of his sandwich. Then realization struck. "What's your name?" "Oh, I'm Logan Crofters." As the weeks passed, Patton stayed sitting at Logan's table, dishing out puns whenever necessary, but mostly asking Logan about different kinds of science-related things. He liked the way that Logan explained things. He made a lot more sense of their teacher sometimes. "Am I bothering you?" Patton asked one day. He had slid over his grapes to Logan, who was munching on them between reading paragraphs from a book about frogs. "What? Am I annoying?" "No, Patton, you're not annoying." Logan seemed a bit exasperated with the question, but he answered it anyway. "Are we friends?" Patton's eyes were focused on Logan. It had been so long since he had had a friend that wasn't his mom or one of his many stuffed animals. "Oh, I don't know. I've never had a friend before." Logan's response was curt, and Patton's jaw dropped. "What?" He jumped up from where he was sitting, then ran over to sit next to Logan. "Can I be your best friend, then?" Sure." "Yay!" He wrapped his arms around Logan tightly. Logan ran into the waiting room of the hospital, finding Patton sitting on a chair, his head in his hands. He approached him quickly a hand instinctively going to his best friend's back. "I got here as soon as I could. Is she okay?" "She collapsed low. She went into the back to rinse off the new roses, and when I went to check on her, she was on the ground." Patton leaned into Logan's shoulder, tears staining the polo shirt he was wearing. "The doctors say it might have come back, but they're running tests." "She's in good hands, Pat. I'm going to text my parents and let them know that I'll be here with you until she gets home, okay? And then I can be there for you." Logan's phone was in his hand, and he sent a quick text. "Tell me something logical, please," Patton whispered once the two were seated together, hands twisted together, Patton's head on Logan's shoulder. "Are you sure?" he asked, and just got a nod in return. "Well, logically speaking, a bee should not be physically able to fly." "Oh!" Patton was giggling, his grip tightening on Logan's hand. "You know me so well. Thank you." The morning after the opening night of the musical, Patton entered the apartment yawning. He didn't get much sleep thanks to Remus, and he was hoping to take a nap before delving into studying for his final exams. When he entered the apartment, he found Logan sitting at the kitchen table, papers spread out in front of him. "Hey, Lo, no Janice?" he asked, glancing around. Logan shook his head. "He went home a while ago. Roman and Virgil are still in bed, though," he explained, stretching his arms up. "Did you have a good time with Remus last night?" Patton's face reddened at the question, and he nodded. "Does Hannah like him?" It still caught Patton off guard whenever Logan referred to his mom by her first name, but they had been friends for almost 15 years, so of course it made sense. Logan could call her Mom, too, if he wanted to. He was there whenever Patton needed him, whenever she had a doctor's appointment that Patton couldn't drive her to because someone needed to look after the store. Patton wondered why Logan did all of this. Sometimes he thought back to that time when he had asked him if they were friends, all the way back when they were first getting to know each other, and Patton, little Patton, just proclaimed them as friends. Did he shoehorn Logan into their friendship so that he could never branch out? No, that couldn't be true, because Logan joined debate and chess and academic decathlon in high school, but still spent all of his free time with Patton. And even once Roman and Janice, and now Virgil and Remus entered their lives, he still regarded Patton as one of his best friends. "Hey, you look like you're having some troubling thoughts, Patton. Want to talk about them?" Logan's voice was pulling him back into the present, and he nodded, sitting on one of the stools. He was quiet for a bit, though, and Logan kept writing some notes down until Patton finally started talking again. Are you just my best friend out of convenience? Because I claimed you so early on and never really had any other friends? Do you just stay my friend out of pity?" Patton was looking down until he felt Logan's hand on his back, and then a laugh came from the usually stoic man. "Patton, you're my best friend because everyone else is annoying. If I didn't want to be your friend, I wouldn't be. You're a lot to deal with, but I've been dealing with you for 15 years, and I plan on dealing with you for many more." Logan's voice was serious, and Patton could tell that he meant what he was saying. He leaned into Logan, wrapping his arms around his best friend. "Thanks. Lo, love ya." "Love you too, Patton." Patton's arm burned, but in a good way. Underneath the plastic, he could see the vibrant colors of his very first tattoo, his mother's favorite flower and a bee sitting in its petals, to remind him of Logan. He didn't tell anyone that he was getting it, not even Logan, so when he got home to find Logan sitting at the kitchen table doing homework while talking to his mom, he was surprised. "Lo, what are you doing here?" he asked, putting his arm behind his back so neither of them could see. He kissed his mother on the cheek before sitting on one of the chairs beside them. "I came by to study, but Hannah said that you went out for something," Logan explained, pushing his glasses up further on his nose. "What did you do, baby?" his mother asked, glancing at him carefully. He was still holding his arm, but he smiled and brought it out, setting it on the table. I got a tattoo, Mama," Patton said hesitantly. She looked at it carefully, smiling a little bit. "A sunflower, your favorite." Logan eyed the tattoo as well, nodding in understanding. "To celebrate you beating your cancer again." "Patton, will you take me to get a tattoo?" Logan's voice was there suddenly, and the two hearts looked at him with surprised expression. "Lo, you want a tattoo?" "I want to get a constellation tattooed on my shoulder, the one that was in the sky on the day we became best friends." Patton leaned into Remus's side, the taller man's arms wrapped around his shoulders. They were at the cafe, the others having gone home long ago to study or sleep, but the couple stayed long after, chatting with Remy whenever he brought them over refills on their drinks or small pastries. Remus's grip got a little tighter around Patton each time he shone his signature bright smile at the barista, earning a soft thigh squeeze from the taller man and a kiss on the cheek. Maybe that was why he did it, not because he was worried about Patton flirting, but because his boyfriend always comforted him with those delicate touches and sweet kisses. The bell above the door to the cafe rang gently as a few men stepped in. Remus glanced out of the corner of his eye at them, and he thought his heart would stop. "Shit," he muttered, looking down, earning a confused squeak from Patton. "Shit, we need to go right now." Patton glanced over at the group of men, all dressed in leather, covered in tattoos and piercings, evil smirks on their faces as they noticed Remus. "Do you know them?" Patton asked softly, and Remus buried his face into the other's shoulder, a small note of truth escaping his mouth. "Are they—" He didn't need to finish the sentence. Patton wasn't a fool. He could tell by Remus's body language and the way he tensed up that this was the group of boys he had spent time with in high school. "I'll go pay our tab. Will you be okay?" Remus said nothing, but gripped onto Patton tighter, shaking his head. "Remus Creative," one of the voices said, dark and gritty, and Remus cringed, looking up at him. Him. "Looks like you found yourself a precious pansy, Fuck off." His voice was weak, trembling, and the memories of those eyes tore through him. "Aw, don't worry, kitten. He'll tire of you soon enough, and you won't have to deal with his voices and crude comments," another one said, and Patton considered lunging at him, but held back, because Remus was trembling beside him. "Everything all right, babes?" Remy was there, thank God, and Patton smiled sweetly at him, taking his debit card out of his pocket. "Can we pay off our tab, please, Remy? We have to get going," Patton said, his eyes flickering from the barista to the men, and a wave of understanding seemed to cross Remy's features, who nodded and took the card, going back to the counter speedily. "Running away again, Remus?" that voice asked again, and the mustached man shuddered, unable to look away from the grimace on his face. "You were always good at that." Patton's frown deepened, and he glared at the man. "Aw, are you going to try to defend him, little kitten? Trying to be so cool with those floral tattoos?" "I told you to fuck off!" Remus was standing, his fists clenched, glaring at the men. Patton scrambled to his feet, a hand gripping the back of Remus's jacket. Remy reappeared, handing the debit card to Patton, placing himself between Remus and the group of men. "All right, boys, get out. You're not welcome here if you're going to torment some of my best customers." His voice was firm, and they all glanced at the manager title on his name tag. "I don't want to have to call the authorities. Get out." The group scrambled out the door, the bell clanging almost annoyingly to the three, and Patton's arms were around Remus. "Hey, you okay, babe?" he asked, feeling the tall boyfriend shaking, his head low. "Shh, it's okay. Everything is okay. We're okay." "Are you babes gonna be okay?" Remy asked, still standing there, arms crossed as he watched the group of men outside in deep discussion. "Thank you, Remy." Remus finally spoke, his voice still low. "If you hadn't stepped in, I might have done something I'd regret." Remy smiled, settling a hand on his shoulder. "Hey, no one messes with my babes like that," he said before going back behind the counter. Patton's lips were pressed against Remus's cheek, grounding him. "Let's go, Ree." Remus woke up, feeling Patton's arms around him loosely. The smaller man was snoring softly, and Remus smiled, carting his fingers through the fading pink hair. When they got back to his bedroom last night, he needed to be grounded, and Patton was there, being gentle and soft, his hands and lips all over his body until Remus felt relaxed enough to sleep. Patton groaned a bit in his sleep, stretching his arms and legs, his eyes fluttering open to meet Remus's. "Hi," he said softly, his voice heavy with sleepiness. "Morning, little flower," Remus said, leaning down to press a stinky-mouthed kiss to his boyfriend's lips. "Thank you for last night." "Oh, of course, honey, anything for you," he said quietly, but Remus could tell something was on his mind. "What did they mean by you tiring of me, or running away?" "Before you, I never really had a committed partner. I'd run at the first hint that things were getting serious. When they said those words, I ran," Remus explained, looking down. "But that's not going to happen with you, Patton. You mean so much to me. You're everything to me." "Everything?" Patton asked, a smile appearing on his face, his lips pressing to Remus's cheek and then his neck. "Patton," he started, his heartbeat speeding up, and he wondered if the other could hear it because soft blue eyes met his green ones. "I love you." Patton blinked, absorbing the knowledge, and then his arms were around Remus's neck, their lips pressed together joyously. "I love you too, Remus." Remus smiled into the kiss. He wasn't afraid anymore. Patton was there, he was with him, and everything was good. And if things came up, they'd work through them together. They were a team, and they always would be. He kept repeating those words through kisses. The weight from his mouth lifted, and he wished he could have said those words to Patton weeks ago, because they felt so right to say them.